So it's technically nighttime as I record this, but when I upload this video, it's going to be Tuesday, August 9th. And in this episode of Surviving the Pavement, I'm going to take you back to way before even my homeless days. We're talking my late teens and early 20s, back when I was still hanging out with gang members in the Milwaukee area and doing things I just shouldn't do. Or back when I was trying to work my way out of that anyway. So this story is about one of the few times I made a wise decision as a young person. Okay, so I get out of prison in early of January of 1997, and I need a place to live. Hold up. I was in prison on some gang-related stuff. I'll get into that another day, but either way, I get out of prison in January 97. I go stay with my parents for like a month or two, and I need a place to stay. I need a place of my own because, your POs want you to have a place of your own as soon as you can possibly get it. So, I got a friend, and I don't want to say his real name on here, but we're going to call him Jamie. Okay, so let's call him Jamie. Not his real name, but let's call him Jamie. My friend Jamie had gotten an apartment on the south side of Milwaukee, 24th and National, actually. And it was just a studio apartment, but it was going to be really cheap rent because it's a really bad neighborhood. So I moved down there, and stuff hits the fan right away, basically. I mean, maybe a couple of weeks apiece, but before I'm doing a bunch of stuff that I shouldn't be doing. I'm carrying guns, I'm carrying drugs, I'm just, I shouldn't be involved in any of this stuff, but I kind of am. Like I said, it was a bad neighborhood. The Spanish Cobras and the Latin Kings were at war at that time, shooting at each other on an almost nightly basis. There was a Spanish Cobra house across the street. Another gang called the 2-1s on 20th Street and 19th Street were also at war with the Latin Kings. So that war was popping off real crazy. A lot of stuff going on. But believe it or not, the story I want to tell you guys isn't even about that whole situation. The story I want to tell you guys is about what happened after all of that stuff started dying down. We got into it with some gangbangers from the north side of Milwaukee, but after that died down, another story started to bloom, and this is the story I want to tell you today. They say it takes a lifetime to earn respect, but a millisecond to lose it, and this story is going to show you why. My roommate, Jamie, after all this stuff started dying down, started developing some addictions. And these addictions were driving him to do stupid stuff. He went to one of the suburbs of Milwaukee where he grew up one weekend, and he basically sold a bunch of people some pure baking soda. It was nothing but baking soda. He put it in baggies, he sold it to people, and he ripped a bunch of people off that way. All right, so he comes back and he's kind of telling me about this. And he's asking me if I got his back in case people, once people figure it out, they're going to want to be after him, right? So I'm like, sure, he's my roomie. I got his back on that. I mean, I don't like what he's doing. I think what he's doing is stupid, but you're my roomie. You gave me a place to stay. We've been friends for a long time. I got your back. Okay, so a little bit of time passes and some tension is starting to develop between me and Jamie because I had just gotten out of prison and I'm not really trying to be involved in certain stuff, but I'm kind of letting Jamie drag me into stuff. Jamie goes back out to this suburb of Milwaukee, okay? and he spends an entire week up there, and he does the same thing he did last time. In this one suburb, he sold baking soda to at least 40 different people, maybe 50. And I decided I didn't want to have his back anymore after that, after he came back. And you might say, well, no, that's still your roommate. He still helped you out. You've got to have his back. It doesn't matter if he's wrong. No. There are some things that are so wrong that even when a friend, that even though somebody's your friend, you can't have their back about it. There are some things that just cross that line, and this is one of them. Because the second time he went to this suburb, I don't want to say the name of it, but I don't want to keep calling it this suburb. Let's call it River Creek. Okay, we're going to call this suburb River Creek. That's not the real name of it, but let's call it River Creek. The second time he went to River Creek, and he, ripped a bunch of people off by selling them baking soda. What I came to find out was that he wasn't just doing this to people he was kind of associated with. He was doing this to his friends, his close friends. He was ripping people off that grew up on the same block with him, that had known him since he was in preschool, that had been best friends with him his whole life. Yeah, he was ripping off other people too, but he was also ripping off like all of his own close friends that he grew up with and knew his whole life. So when he came back down, and I already kind of knew what was up because people were calling the house, and this is before cell phones, right before cell phones started getting really big. People were calling the house, people that I knew were good friends of his, looking for him, and they didn't sound happy. But they didn't say what it was, but I started to kind of put some things together. Anyway, when Jamie comes back, he admits what he did. He was gone for like a week this time. And when he came back, he basically asked me if I had his back on, if something went down. And I told him, no, I do not have your back on this stuff. I was like, this is just, what you're doing is so foul. I don't even want nothing to do with it. And we got to talking, and he decided it would be best I moved out, and I completely agreed. So, here's the thing. Here's the kicker about this story. Jamie had a really good name. Really good name. He was a trusted person around River Creek. Like his name was so good that when he was first selling this bad baking soda to everybody, people weren't even thinking that it was his fault. His name was so good. He was known to be one of the most honest and straightforward people that you will ever meet. That was his reputation he had built his whole life. And so when word started getting around that he was selling baking soda, like just baking soda, people weren't even thinking that it was even him doing it. People were thinking that somebody was ripping him off, giving him bad stuff, and then he was unknowingly passing that stuff on to his friends. That's what people were thinking at first. That's how good his name was, that he could sell bad stuff to people. And their first thought wasn't even, this dude was trying to rip me off. Their first thought was, man, somebody must be ripping him off because he's a good dude. But people did eventually figure out what he was up to, and it didn't take them long. And I won't get into the details of all of this, but word started getting back to me that he started receiving some payback. He had to watch his back everywhere he went. He got jumped a bunch of times. From what I heard, he actually he was a dual citizen in America and Canada, actually. And from what I heard, it got so bad that he ran away from Canada because he just wasn't safe anywhere around here. But here's why I'm telling you guys all this. that was one of the few times back when I was young. At this time, I am barely 18 or 19 years old. Rarely did I ever make a good decision back then. I was down for whatever, which is why I went to prison in the first place. But in this particular case, I made the right decision, even though I lost my place and had to go homeless for a while. I said, man, I looked Jamie right in the eye and I said, man, I do not have your back on this stuff. And it's a good thing I left when I did, because from what I've heard, I was never able to verify this, but from what I heard, people came to the apartment within 2 or 3 days after that looking for him and looking to put a serious hurting on him. And they might have actually put a serious hurting on him right then and there. If I was still there, I would have been caught up in that stuff, and I would have been guilt by association because I'm his roommate. So people would have automatically thought that I was either caught up in it or I at least had his back. The worst part is, a year earlier, maybe even 6 months earlier, I might have gone along with this. Not against my own friends, but I might have overlooked the fact that he ripped off his own friends. Because we ran in different circles. And the thing is, I behaved when I was in prison, but I didn't behave because I was planning on being a good boy. The reason I behaved in prison is because I wanted to get out and hang with my 2 best friends as soon as I possibly could. My 2 best friends were serious gang members. And the only reason that didn't end up happening is because those 2 friends of mine caught lengthy prison sentences and got sent away about 3 weeks before I got out. So I never really crossed paths with them again. But I had it in my mind to do some stuff that I shouldn't have done, and I probably should have ended up back in prison. But this is one of those rare cases, as a young guy who was trying to be involved in gangs or hanging around that stuff and doing stupid stuff. This is one of those rare cases I made a good decision, even though it went against me even having a place to stay anymore or whatever. I made a good decision. I got out of there. Not only did I save myself from going to prison or jail, I probably saved myself from getting beat up and possibly stabbed or even shot a bunch of times, because, like I said, Jamie ripped off a lot of people in a very short amount of time, and people do not like being sold pure baking soda when they think they're getting Coke. And okay, so I don't even have to explain any further than that. But yeah, now the good news is, in my future after that, I did make good decisions as far as staying away from gangs and committing crimes, especially serious crimes. However, I made bad decisions as far as getting involved with alcoholism, and which led me to being homeless in the streets. And, I've talked about that in other videos, and I will talk about that again in future videos. But how close I came to being beat up on a regular basis, stabbed, shot, thrown back in prison because I was in the wrong situation, and I made the decision to get out of that situation just in the nick of time. And it's a decision I wouldn't have even made the right decision if that had been just 6 months earlier. God was looking out for me. That's all.